The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Insight Pitch with Skip Lockwood. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and the host is the closer, Skip Lockwood. How are you, sir?
I am wonderful. What a beautiful day. We're in Florida right now. It is just a beautiful day down here. Opening day tomorrow, imagine. Ralph. Opening day.
And here I am stuck in Northern California where it's 70 degrees and the sun is shining. And there are fewer Floridians, which makes it terrific on that level. But, you know, you do what you can, and it's a balance where you live, what area, what different part. What part of Florida are you in?
We are up in the Panhandle, Ralph. It's called the Redneck Riviera. It's a great spot. We enjoy it very much. We've got my daughter's down here, granddaughter. We have a blast out here.
Beautiful. What temperature and humidity?
Humidity, I'm not so sure about it. It was 82 degrees today. So I had to go play golf because it was so nice.
All right.
Somebody's got to do it.
I'm sure that was a hell of a sacrifice for you, having to do that. You know, to be serious for a second, just the walking, if you go out and walk it, that'll keep you young for a long time. You don't need the aerobic exercise. You don't need anything but keeping active and keeping the poundage, the tonnage off, and we'll all live to
be 90. I'm not sure it's done yet. If you hit it left and right like I do, you get a longer walk.
Right. Okay. Skip, tomorrow, as we speak, the day before opening day, tomorrow's opening day, I thought we would talk about what it's like to be on the bubble as a major league player, not knowing if he's going to make the roster. And, you know, sometimes they bring you north and they still haven't made a decision, or injuries, this, that, and the other thing. And what's it like inside the head of somebody who's competing for that 25th man roster spot?
When I played, Ralph, you would make the roster a week or so early, so you wouldn't really come north and not have the roster made. Today, they always bring a player or two north with them, and there's an extra player. They only suit 25, as you know, for the first game. But there's a couple extra players usually come along. Sometimes they're catchers, to catch in a bullpen, or sometimes there's players that they need for the practices beforehand, especially if they play an exhibition game or something like that right before opening day. I tell you what, being on the bubble is really tough. It's tough for the younger player because just think of it, Ralph, they've got families. They're in Florida. Paycheck hasn't come in yet. At least when I played, you didn't get paid until the season started. So the first paycheck hasn't come in yet. You're on expenses down in Florida, and maybe you get some travel money. But when I played, you weren't being paid yet until the season started. And then your family's going to be in Florida. You've got to come north, and you don't know whether you're going to make the team or not for some of these young men. There's a lot of anxiety here. There's a lot on the line. Sometimes the whole family has to go through staying in a hotel someplace. The kids are supposed to be in school, probably.
Right.
A lot of players will make the move from Florida up to, or Arizona, up to where the big league team is, and stay in a hotel for months on end without their family. So it's a significant issue for the younger players. I think for the older players, the guys with multi-year contracts. It's not such a big deal because a lot of them have homes where they're coming back to. And when they come back into an environment that they know. So for me, I pitched opening day twice in Milwaukee, and I must say the pitching exercises that I had, the outings that I had, pitching an opening day was just the sweetest thing. First of all, I would know before opening day that I was going to pitch like a week in advance. So I had to shoulder the burden of knowing that I get the ball on opening day, and I would know that, 5 to 7 days before I was actually going to, sometimes even before I made the last start in spring training.
But there's all that pride that goes with it, and you're listed as the opening day starter for 4, 5, 6 days in a row, whereas it's a day-to-day thing during the season, and it's got to be a feather in your cap mentally, your self-esteem. Hey, I'm an opening day pitcher. I'm the man at the top of the rotation for whatever it's worth. Wow. And you went from that to being a closer, a position player, to being a starting pitcher, to being a closer. You've got a myriad of tales to tell. So I'm glad we're doing this, Skip, and I'm learning a lot. Let's get back.
Let me tell you a little bit of story about being open. Opening day is a special day. A lot of major league teams protected the opening day gate because it was such a big gate for opening day, and they wanted that revenue. They would protect the Thursday opening date with an off day Friday. So if you wanted to come to a ball game, Thursday was the day, opening day, and they wouldn't even have a ball game on Friday. That's how important it was. But today that they continue to play. Opening day is just one of 162. But I can tell you what, the opening day pitcher is on the spotlight and pitching on the bubble, and that is usually that's the best starter, the guy that's had the best spring. Not always the best pitcher on the team because sometimes they can be hurt. Like Noah Syndergaard, I think, is going to pitch tomorrow, and he was hurt last year, I believe, but he's going to get the ball, I think, for the Mets tomorrow. At least that's what I read in the paper. There's a lot of pride. There's a lot of when you're thinking about going out to the mound. This is what you've been trained for. I mean, this is what you've been thinking about. Being an opening day pitcher starts when you're in the Little League, when you put that first uniform on, and then when you went up to high school and you wore the uniform and you got signed. It's a dream come true for these players to go out for the opening day crowd. Everybody's buzzing. It's only one of a bunch of starts you're going to get, but it's opening day, the chance for you to look at the season with a clean slate. It's a great day. It was a great day for me.
I can very well imagine that, not having been there or around there. But let's get back to a statement you made a few minutes ago when you talked about a pitcher on the bubble or a player on the bubble, let's say, and you said there's a lot at stake. Now,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
You certainly understated that because let's talk, even back in the day that you played, there are some players that have a contract that says they get X number of dollars where they're in the majors, plus pension time, plus money from tops and everything else, the baseball cards. But the difference between that and starting the season at AAA, what that means financially, and let's even talk for free agency, because at this point it means nothing.
Well,
hello,
in the
Ralph.
70s.
Hey, excuse me 1 second. Is this Doug?
No, this is Jerry Feidelberg.
Oh, Jerry, the show is tomorrow.
no, I thought we changed it because it's opening day tomorrow. I'm going to be at the ballpark, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll tell you what, Jerry Fido, I go on the roll. I forgot about that. Let me just explain to you that we are doing Insight Pitch with Skip Lockwood, and you met Jerry Feidelberg way back, so you're welcome to join our discussion about opening day.
Hey, Jerry, how you doing?
Good, Skip. How are you doing? How's things down in
I'm
Florida?
doing excellent.
How
I
about
was
that
just
for dancing on my feet, Skip? I apologize to you, Jerry, because I had no remembrance of that conversation, and so here we are. That's pretty good, and it is opening day tomorrow, and Skip is telling us about the thrill of being an opening day pitcher. He wasn't just a closer for the Mets for 5 years. He was, among other things, a position player who came up and made the major leagues and went back and started his career, in essence, again as a pitcher, works his way back up to the majors, and pitched on the Milwaukee Brewers, and pitched on 2 opening day. Were they consecutive opening days, Skip?
Consecutive opening days. One was at home in Milwaukee and one was on the road. I won one game and I got a no decision in the other game. In Milwaukee, when you warmed up for opening day, you didn't go into the bullpen. You warmed up right where the bat boy sits, right along the third base between first base and home plate. They had a mound that was on the field, obviously, but it was only on the field 10 feet. And I was throwing towards a catcher and a plate that was right in front of the stands. So the people, they would throw beer on me. They spilled their beer. I was literally warming up in front of these people to go out, on the field, because I wasn't warming up in the bullpen. So opening day, when you started to warm up, you were right on the field, opening up, warming up in front of everybody. It was quite the thing.
And there was the bunting. Did that affect your head a little bit? Where on opening day, and I don't even know if they still have that in parks. And I don't know if people know what bunting is. Bunting is a decoration of the colors of the flag that they put around the boxes, the box seats, and they run all the way down the line. And it, automatically you think you're in a special occasion because they do the bunting in the World Series and the All-Star games. Jerry, maybe you can tell us, does bunting still exist?
It sure does, and they put it out. They don't put a lot of it out, but what they also do on the field, Ralph, is they mark on both sides opening day or opening week for Major League Baseball. It's in chalk, whatever. So you know that the first few games are the opening of the season. And all I can tell you is that when I was with the A's in the 90s, I was on the medical staff, Skip, with the A's back in the 90s. Whenever I would go over to opening night, the A's very rarely open opening day. This is the first time since '94 that they're opening on opening day. But there was this huge sense of excitement. Everything is your chances are as good as anybody else. You might be a surprise team. It's just the players. They all get haircuts. They look great. The trainers dress nicely. Everybody's excited to get out there, and get the first pitch going. You have the flyover and have the presentation of the colors, sing the Star Spangled Banner, and then it's play ball. And it really is exciting. And any young pitcher or any pitcher who's going on for opening day, it's got to be a thrill of a lifetime. That's all I can tell you. It's got to be the most exciting day of the year.
Jerry, let me tell you where it starts. So the first thing that happens when you get to the ballpark opening day is you've got a brand new uniform to put on.
Correct.
So that's a brand new uniform, and it says your name on the back of it. Got your number and your name on the back of it. And a hat, you get a brand new hat, and the brand new hat has cardboard in it. And some rookies like me that were starting opening day forgot to take the cardboard out. So one year when I was starting, I pitched an inning, and the catcher came out, and it was Phil Roof, and he said, you need to take the cardboard out of your hat. And I was still in the hat. I didn't take it out. I had forgotten. So he reminded me, I'm standing on the mound taking the cardboard out of my hat, and it's a big piece of cardboard. I'm trying to fold it and put it in my pocket so that the people, there's 40,000 people, is looking at me like, what in the world is going on out there? And I'm folding this cardboard up and putting it in my pocket because I forgot to take it out.
Wow. What a story.
That's a great story. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Inside baseball. Inside baseball.
Now, what do they do? They come around and fit you so your hat fits properly, or you go pick out a bunch of them? How does that work?
I think the uniforms are fitted today probably by...
No, but I mean the cap size.
Yeah, it's 7 1/4, 7 1/2. And if it didn't fit too good, you'd probably sweat a little bit and shrink it. So.
Okay. Yeah. Good points.
Ralph, you made a great point a little bit ago about having a split contract, and that was a big deal for the young players coming up. So opening day, when they sing the Star Spangled Banner, you're making a major league minimum at least. If you're not on a roster on opening day, a lot of times you're making a minor league contract, which was significantly less. Sometimes it was a couple $1,000s to play a month versus in the minimum today, what is it, $500,000 or something like that in the big league?
Oh, it's crazy today.
That's about right.
There's a lot more money involved, especially for these young men coming up. And I don't want to minimize the fact that as a veteran player, starting over and putting zeros on the field again means a lot because you can erase a lot of skepticism if you can pitch well on opening day and re-solidify your position on the team as a leader and as a starting pitcher. It's a big game for these players.
Yeah. Hey, when I say the salaries are outrageous, I'm not downing the player for accepting the outrageous salary. It's well deserved because it's been bargained for, and it is definitely a share of the profits. What I'm downing is that most people don't know it's the fans paying for it. It's with the advertising and buying the 12 different uniforms in the gift shop and this, that, and the other thing. And that it's become corporate is what's wrong with it. But it's America where the player should earn as much as he can get.
Absolutely, Ralph.
Back in the day of DiMaggio and Mays and Mantle, I mean, they were making so incredibly less money than they deserved, if you will. The owners were absolutely raking it in back then, not in comparison to today, but certainly in comparison to what they were paying out. And I feel sorry for those players. Skip, you lived right through the transition where you were a free agent and you got to be that, and you at least enriched yourself with a long-term contract, and that you did well.
Ralph, do you remember Leonard Coppett?
Very well. It was my first interview, as a matter of fact.
He was one of the great sports writers. He's in the Baseball's Hall of Fame, and he's in the NBA Hall of Fame as a writer. Leonard was talking to me about George Weiss when he was with the Yankees. And you remember George Weiss was very tight with the players. And this is a story about Mickey Mantle. In 1956, Mickey Mantle, I think he won the Triple Crown. He had 356, 50 home runs, whatever. The following year, his batting average dropped to 325. And Weiss had the temerity to tell him he was going to cut his salary 10%. Can you believe that? He was going to cut Mickey Mantle's salary. The guy would be, if he were playing today, would be $30 million a year player. He was going to cut his salary 10%. Then he told me that Weiss got whatever money Weiss could get, he got a percentage of it. So if he saved $100,000, he got $25,000. So he had a vested interest in not paying the players, and that's what the players had to deal with because of the reserve clause. They had no leverage, none whatsoever. They were mere chattel, and thanks to Kurt Flood, and Flood never saw the benefit of it, but thanks to Kurt, the players got free agencies, and look what it's done for the game. It really has. It's been great.
Thanks to Marvin Miller, I would say.
Marvin Miller. The other thing that's going on now is the luxury tax. Once you go by the $197 million threshold, the teams have to pay a penalty. So a lot of teams will pay up to that 197, and that's why some of the free agents couldn't get contracts this year, because they were the teams would be forced into that penalty. So that became sort of a salary cap. And I remember in '94, the night of the strike, they told me not to say anything. The average player in 1994 was making $1 million, and probably the highest paid was $3 million. And the public doesn't have sympathy for a player making $3 million. Now that $3 million player is a $25 million a year player. But
there's something to take into consideration. Sometimes the average isn't the medium, and there are two.
Yeah. Right.
There are two separate statistics, but notwithstanding, players today do make a lot of money, but the competition to get here is different also because you're dealing with players from different countries. It's a different world to get here. So things have changed, and they change in different ways, and when you add finances into it, it really confuses things. But I want Skip to elaborate a little bit on having lived before free agency and after free agency.
Hey, Jerry, I wanted to ask you a question, Jerry. Are the medical staff, the trainers, and the medical staff covered by the major league minimum? Do they get the minimum salary, or are they just they're left out, right?
Yeah, they're employees of the club. Now, if the club goes to the playoffs, if the club goes to the World Series, they may get a bonus for going to the World Series, and they get rings and all that stuff. But they're not covered by MLB, nor are the umpires for that matter.
The umpires aren't covered either.
They have their own health plan. The umpires had their own health plan. And I remember one year I had to bring some medicine over for Al Clark, and he wanted to pay his $5 copay. I said fine. And when I got over to the ballpark, I said, I need your card. He says, what do you need my card for? And I'm going to argue with Al Clark. I said, I need your card to process it. So as it turned out, the medicine was less than $5, but I didn't tell him that, and I charged him the $5. He was happy.
Ralph, before free agency came along, the players played for an awful lot of pride. We didn't have much money to spend. I was making $15,000-$18,000 when I was starting for the Brewers. Well, we didn't make any money. My wife would come to the ballpark, and we were trying to get her into the ballpark, into the players' lot, which was $2 or $3. And opening day was always a problem because the players would come and park in the lot. Then here comes your family along, and the gate guard wouldn't let them in the lot. because he didn't recognize the car and everything was new. My wife had to park in general parking and walk, trying to get into opening day, the day that I was pitching, starting the game. She was almost late for the game.
Wow.
Trying to get all the kids in. Opening day is, let me tell you about the Milwaukee Brewers in 1970. The Milwaukee Brewers were the Seattle Pilots in spring training,
right.
All spring training. And they got opening week when they were coming north to fly north, and they didn't go to Seattle. The whole team flew to Milwaukee and became the Milwaukee Brewers. When we made that change, it was the last week of spring training. All the luggage, the baseballs, the bats, the players' luggage and everything was on a truck going towards Seattle. And the players got on a plane and they flew to Milwaukee. Now, we got to Milwaukee, we didn't have any hats. We didn't have any uniforms. The field had snow on it. There was no reservations in the hotel for us to stay at. They took the spring training uniforms that said Pilots on them, and they somehow took those words off and put Brewers over the spring training Pilots uniform. And you could see the words Pilots underneath that didn't really come off all that well. And they went to the local hardware, the local sports store, and got Marquette hats. So the M, at least with the M on it. It had M on it. So that's what we played with. We had Pilot spring training uniforms redone and a Marquette hat on, trying to do opening day in Milwaukee in 1970.
Beautiful. That's a great story.
That's a great story. Is right, Jerry.
I have one question for Skip. I have a question for Skip. Skip, you started in 1970. You threw on opening day and you said it was cold. Did you feel the cold when you were pitching?
Yeah, you could. They didn't have heaters in the dugouts or anything like that. It was cold. I didn't start 70. I started, I think it was 72 with the game I started.
Okay.
Opener. It was always cold there.
Worse. Yeah.
Well,
at least when you're pitching, you warm up.
I think the pitcher has a big advantage. He's the only one on the field that's loose. So, when you get a chance to pitch and it's cold like that, I love to pitch in the cold because I thought the bat was cold. The batter's hands were brittle, and I was going for the inside part of the plate. And I wanted that bat to sting if I got a ball in there. So I really thought the pitcher had an advantage.
Yeah, and they weren't wearing batting gloves in those days. They weren't wearing any batting gloves. So if you hit the ball and you didn't get it, it would sting your hands, something fierce.
Yeah, and so the pitchers used to try to pitch inside as much as they could, and then make so we didn't put the shift on. We had we're trying to cover the whole field. There's no such thing as a shift. So,
right.
Pitchers would pitch the inside part of the plate mostly. They didn't want to pitch the outside part of the plate. That's where the fat part of the bat is out there.
Yeah, but on the inside of the plate, the batter can pull the ball more readily. Is there a trade-off there?
Well, Ralph, if you can put a little cheese on it, you can get it on the inside part of the plate. Sometimes pretty good.
And you did, by the way. And you did, by the way. Let me ask you. You're supposed to go to Seattle from spring training. You go to Milwaukee. Did you have an apartment or a house rented in Seattle? Did you have a lease that you had to get out of? Had you been to Milwaukee before? How about your wife and family? Everybody was on the bubble, so to speak, under those circumstances. How was it for you?
It was impossible to manage. I mean, you couldn't anticipate. So Bud Selig bought this team. He was trying to buy the team for a couple of years, and trying to buy a team. And then when Seattle came up and didn't do well, he put his bid in again, and then he got the team. It was negotiated through spring training. We didn't know anything about the negotiations, and so all of a sudden we're heading to Milwaukee. So the players didn't have a place to stay. We all stayed. What was the name of that? The Pfister or something? I think it was downtown Milwaukee where they got us reservations there. We were still two in a room there. So when we got to the season started, you always had a roommate. You didn't have a single room or anything. It was always you had a roommate. We had no place to stay. And there was no advertising. So the Pearson National League team with the Braves for years and years. And all of a sudden it's an American League team. The people weren't ready for that. They didn't understand. I think they came out because of curiosity. And the funny part about it is, Milwaukee's not an easy name to spell. And the guy that put Milwaukee across the jersey had left off an E at the end of Milwaukee. So if you ever see those uniforms, you could see that it wasn't centered right. It should break like MILK, it should break on a K or something, but it didn't. It broke funny because the guy had to add another E to the end of the name because it was misspelled when he transposed the name.
I could imagine a player standing in front of the mirror trying to get adjusted to a major league uniform and take pride in the major league uniform, and it's misspelled. So you didn't do real well initially, the team, Milwaukee. Were you there when Henry Aaron arrived?
I pitched against Henry Aaron.
Really?
When I was brought up mid-season in '70 because they had an exhibition game against the Braves. A lot of publicity, a lot of headlines in the papers. Here's the Braves, the Braves are coming back to play the Brewers, and Henry Aaron and all-star lineups at Payton, all those guys are coming back, and they were on TV and everything. At the time, this was mid-season. The Brewers didn't want to burn another pitcher because the pitching staff was tired. So they brought me up from AAA. I think it was June or July. And so I come up from Portland, Oregon. I was pitching pretty good. So I come up. I've got a round-trip ticket to Portland. So I'm coming up. I'm going to pitch the game. I think they're going to put me right on the plane back after the game to go back to Portland afterwards. And I pitched to his Hank Aaron up at the plate, and all the legends and Hall of Famers. And I'm a kid up that wears very thick glasses, standing and the pitcher's mound 60 feet away from a legend. And it was awe-inspiring, I tell you. I got him out though. He grounded out to second base for me.
Wow. That's a great story. But you were never his teammate officially.
No, never officially.
Okay.
Now I have a question for Skip because he sounds like he was a little starstruck with Henry Aaron coming up. Who else did you face or pitch against that you really thought was something special, like Clemente or somebody in the American League that was a big star, maybe Harmon Killebrew? Was there anybody that you really said, man, this guy is a huge fan, a huge baseball player. I'm really a fan of his.
Hi,
everybody. Jerry,
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, hello.
Who
Ralph.
just came on?
It's Ralph. Ralph, it's Doug.
Okay,
Doug,
Ralph, I'm
going
to
Doug,
Are you recording?
yes, we have a show. Did you get my email that said we were going to do it tomorrow?
No, I didn't get that email. I'm
Okay,
so very sorry.
No problem. I'm sorry you didn't get it, and we'll do it same time tomorrow.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, Ralph, I'm going to sign off too. I got to do an errand, so it was good talking.
All right, Jerry.
Skip.
Thank you for dropping by,
Jerry.
and
Okay.
I'm going to continue with Skip Lockwood on Insight Pitch. And
Here you go.
Skip, as a producer, I'm dancing like a mother.
Listen, Ralph, this is opening day. Opening day, you just walked the first man. You're pitching opening day, the first guy gets on. And then the next
I'll
guy
tell
hits
you
a
what,
double
though,
into the
I'm
gap.
like Skip Lockwood. I just glare in. I just glare into the catcher as if I could see that far.
Okay.
I'll put that look on my face, and I'll go on. All right.
Bye, Ralph. I'll check in with you tomorrow if I have some time during the game. See if you're recording. Are you going to be?
That
talking
sounds
to
terrific.
That
sounds terrific.
All right.
See you, Jerry.
Well.
All right.
Jerry,
I will as best I can. As much control as I have over it. I'm trying to think ahead. How can I stay well? Moments like this.
Ralph, let me ask. I want to answer Jerry's question. I think he asked a question that people have asked me over the years. You know, who was the toughest out? You know, who was the toughest guy that you faced? You know, was there any single person that you didn't want to face? And how do you pitch around him? Or what did you do? And I would tell Jerry and anybody that each team that I faced had someone on the team that was tough to get out, that I didn't want to face. There were some guys in the league that had exceptional skills. You know, when you look at Oakland in the 70s, and you pitch against guys like Jackson and Mundy and Bando and Joe Rudy, you know, it was a team of sluggers, and you were always in peril. Yankees with Munson and everybody on those teams. Every team used to have somebody. Carmen Killebrew, you know, Harmon Killebrew didn't really have a strike zone. He had about a 5-inch strike zone, and because he was short and he had a great big bat, and he could cover everything you threw to him. He was going to hit with power. So each team had a guy that you really didn't want to come up. I remember in Chicago, the infield was AstroTurf and the outfield was grass. I never saw a field like this in my life. I guess they ran out of money for one of those substances. I don't know which it was, but the infield was
couldn't do both.
No, it was terrible. It was like a bowling alley. I'm 60 feet. Here's Dick Allen. Have you ever seen pictures of Dick Allen? This guy was jacked. He was popping out of his uniforms. He looked angry. He had a bat that was 44 ounces. And if you threw him a curveball or something like that, you were playing on a skating rink with that skid infield. It's like, he'd kill you if he hit a ball back up the middle and you couldn't get out of the way.
Lamar Johnson once told me, he was a minor league manager at a team in Stockton, California that I covered for Topps when I was the Topps rep. And we were talking about Dick Allen. Don't call me Richie, or Richie, don't call me Dick. I don't know which one it was. But he said he'd played in the majors for like 12 years. He'd been around baseball his life. No ball ever came off a bat faster than off Dick Allen's bat. They didn't have these exit speed statistics that they have today where they can actually tell that the ball comes off the bat at 120 miles an hour or what have you. His would have been off the charts. So I know exactly, as a fan, I know of which you speak. How must it be when you know that he hits one up the middle? They're playing with a hard ball. That's all part of the equation of being a major league pitcher that the average fan forgets about. And you want to address that?
You've got to make You've got to make a decision as a pitcher. If you're going to try to field your position, you know, you got to land. If you're a right-handed pitcher, land with your left leg, and you bring your right leg around, and you get in a fielding position. A lot of pitchers disregard that. What they try to do is throw the ball as hard as they possibly can. And if I land awkwardly, or if I'm not in a fielding position, I'm not in a fielding position, but I'm going to get the most mustard I can on the pitch. And that's what I was. So compound the fact that Dick Allen is standing up there with a 44-ounce bat, and I just threw ball one with a curveball, and he knows what's coming next. And you combine that with the fact that I'm not very, very poetic about where I'm landing. I'm not poetry in motion out there, you know. I'm throwing it hard. I'm grunting. I'm trying to get the ball up to home plate. And if he hits one back at me, it's going to kill me. It's going to hit my right side. I'm going to be dead. So the decision I made is I'm going to throw it. I'm not going to be in a fielding position.
Yeah. Good choice, I might add. It led you well. Opening day jitters. Does that go on for everybody? And when the game starts, do they go away?
I think opening day jitters are there. I never felt like I was sick. You know, I felt like there was something in the pit of my stomach. I wasn't terribly hungry. I was nervous a little bit. I didn't feel nausea, but it was clearly something different about that game. And the problem was that if you know you're going to pitch it, you know, a week or so ahead, you get that feeling the day they announce the lineup, the starting lineup. So you understand, hey man, I'm going to get the ball. I'm opening day pitcher. There's going to be a big crowd, you know, from Milwaukee, some of these towns. If you got, 10, 15,000 on a normal crowd, you'd get 40 or 45 opening day. So it was a much bigger crowd. It was just in Milwaukee. The way that you had opening day is that they would interview everybody like a news conference. They didn't do that so much in New York, but they had a news conference and everybody would get, they'd introduce the lineup and everything. I got nervous just doing the news conference. I didn't want to do that thing. I think there was some butterflies, but once I threw that first pitch, I could feel the seams on that fastball, and I could see the life, on the fastball, and I heard the catcher, heard that pop, with the catcher's glove. It seemed to go away from me. I seemed to be more in control. The things that I had visualized and pictured were coming true, and the things I wanted to have happen, I could make happen on the mound. I was a guy that wanted to be in control of the situation. So being able to have it happen the way I saw it, the way I planned it, that was very important for me.
I don't know if we ever talked about this. Were there some catchers that can make the ball sound like it's being thrown harder and pump you up that way?
Yeah. First of all, if you're a sinker ball pitcher, so a sinker ball pitcher grips the seams with the seams, not across the seams, but with the seams. The sinker ball pitcher is going to throw a heavy pitch, what they call a heavy ball, and he's not going to hit the middle of the glove. You can tell a catcher will battle, a sinker ball pitcher to try to get it into the mitt because it's tough to catch it. You can take Mickey Lolich, who was my roommate in Milwaukee, with the Mets. Mickey threw a heavy ball. And when he would throw it, the catcher would struggle with it. So not only did some pitchers, pop the mitt better because they were, across the seam pitchers. Tom Seaver, he could pop the mitt. Jerry Grody was his catcher, and you could hear that mitt pop because it was the kind of pitch he threw. Where Jerry Koosman, if he was throwing and he threw a sinker, he couldn't pop the mitt because the ball would react in a way it would sink. It wouldn't catch the catcher in the middle or the mid all.
Does that get a pitcher pumped up? Hearing the pop up?
Yeah,
it does.
Everything.
I thought it might.
Everything got me excited, Ralph. When I was out there, I used every situation. I tried to use every situation to my advantage. So if I could hear the catcher's glove pop and everything, I would hear the guy swing and miss. I prepared that sound in my head before I ever got to the mound. The other thing I liked about a catcher is I wanted the catcher to hold the target. So if he gives me a target on the outside part of the plate and I start to wind up, I don't want him to drop the mitt. I want him to continue to hold that target because I'm concentrating on the target, and that's where I'm visualizing the ball going into. I didn't want him to drop the mitt on me and then, to put the mitt up again mid-pitch. I wanted him to sit there and hold that mitt for me. And Jerry Grote used to do that really, really well with the Mets. He would hold, and you knew that he was holding, and he would hold it, and he would kind of go get the ball. Instead of waiting for the ball to come all the way to him, he would reach out for it, and try to get it. Jerry Grote was an interesting
I'm glad you mentioned his name. I have a question for you about Jerry Grote. It was said, and I don't know who said it, maybe it was Bench himself, if Grote had played on the Reds, he'd have been the catcher, and they would have moved Bench to third base. What do you say to that?
I thought Bench was an exceptional catcher. I never threw to him, so I only faced him, as a batter. I never threw a ball to him. I can tell you that Grote was one of the more aggressive catchers that you've ever seen in your life. He would do every little possible thing that he could to aggravate the hitter. He'd kick dirt, he'd say things, he was reaching for the pitch. He would do every small little nuance. And when he would roll the ball back to the mound, he would roll it away from the visiting dugout. Do you remember that? He used to roll the ball so that the other pitcher had to walk over towards off the mound and walk over to get it. It was only 10 steps or so, but it was an aggravating thing because he wouldn't roll it back to the pitcher's mound. He'd throw it over towards third base.
That's funny.
Jerry Grote was a good.
That's a competitor. Every little thing. Who did you compete with as a kid that for what you achieved? Who would have been a candidate as a kid to be a big leaguer, to be a closer? Who had that competitive spirit when you were growing up? Friend of yours from the neighborhood.
I'm surprised that you bring this up because I had a good friend that I played with, Richie Hebner.
Really?
Richie
Third
Hebner,
baseman with the Pirates and a gravedigger.
Yeah, the gravedigger. And he came to the Mets briefly at the end of his career. And Richie and I played Little League together. So Richie Hebner was just a great hitter. He was a fastball inside low hitter. He could hit, if you got it in that zone, in his wheelhouse, in his happy zone, he could hit it. And if you got it high in the strike zone, he wasn't able to hit that as well. He'd swing through it. But Richie Hebner growing up, the question you asked, who had a lot of talent? Who could I see was going to play in the big leagues? Richie Hebner was a guy that I saw at 10 years old that was clearly shined above everybody else as a talent for a very young kid. He could do it all, hit with power and run. Not that anybody gets the a shoe into the major league, but boy, Richie could play, and you could see it. He was head and shoulders above everybody else.
And he enjoyed the game too. And you could see that at a young age. I'll bet.
Richie enjoyed everything. He loved to be in uniform. He coached a few years afterwards, and he was a great guy to be around. Richie knew the game. He knew the subtleties of the game. He was a funny guy to be around. Stories, Ralph, when you look at a major league dugout, and you look at the players that are not playing on the field, everybody in that dugout is talking about baseball. Everybody in the dugout is talking about the pitch count or the runners, looking for little subtleties from the other team, trying to pick out pitches that the pitcher is throwing. It's intense in the dugout. Everybody in there is scouting as much as they can, the other team that they're looking, and everybody sees something different. So one pitcher will come in and another pitcher will say, hey, listen, you're doing this, or, when you do that, they can see you doing that. So everybody's helping each other. It's a dynamic environment in that dugout every day. And Richie Hebner.
Now, are there teams that don't have that camaraderie, that really don't like each other, that don't have that chemistry?
I played on a couple teams that were not as good as the Mets were. I mean, New York, when the Mets were exceptional. The atmosphere in the clubhouse and the dugout and everything. I think Joe Torre brought an exceptional amount of esprit, to the ballpark. He demanded a certain competitiveness and professionalism. I think of all the teams that I was with, the Mets were clearly the best, in terms of their focus and their dynamic. I can name a couple of teams that weren't quite as good, but sometimes it was just the leadership was a little older or not paying attention. In the Mets, everybody was paying attention. We had great team leaders.
Now, you've mentioned Joe Torre on several occasions, and I can't think of any other manager that you played for that you've mentioned, and you've been on with me maybe 6-7 times now. Who was a manager that you didn't appreciate?
Well, let me tell you another manager that I did. So I had managers in Milwaukee that came to Milwaukee and took over. I think it was the first team that was in there. The first manager that was in there was Dave Bristol. And he was a motivator. Dave Bristol was a small guy, never raised his voice, but he was a great motivator. And for a young pitcher like me, going out and pitching every day, he was a guy that for a young pitcher, he really got your attention. He was demanding. He had a southern, way of expressing his himself. And so I was a northerner from Boston, and so he and I didn't exactly talk the same language right away, but I got the gist of what he had in mind. And he would come out to the mound, Ralph, and he'd been chewing tobacco. And sometimes he was still chewing tobacco. And he'd get nose to nose with the pitcher. If you went deep in the count, and the team just got a lead, and you walked the first guy and you're deep in the count to the second guy, he'd run out there. And that chew that it didn't smell good, and he'd be right in your face, and he'd be like spitting on you a little bit, and he'd be, telling you something about your performance that he didn't like. And so you
got his point across.
You got his point across, exactly.
Right. Now, tell me about it, because there is definitely a difference between what you called a northern culture, or what you experienced growing up in the north, and a southern culture. And nowhere does it come together more in baseball. Tell us, me and the listeners, if you would, some stories about the two cultures coming together, just off the top of your head.
Well, yeah. First of all, there was a north-south kind of thing, because if you were from the north, you sounded different than the guys did from the south, and so the baseball expressions and the way you talked about the game, there was idiosyncrasies about the game that were completely, I was naive. A lot of those things went over my head. And the Southern guys.
But how about off-field? You're with these guys like 6 months a year. You travel with them, you eat with them, you have buses, airplanes. And not to use anybody in particular, but as an example, but try to give me an example of a Southerner in a Northern person's viewpoint, especially when you were new to it all. Because I was in the Air Force, and it's people coming together from all walks of life, and I want to know how you reacted to it. What made you laugh? What gave you cause for concern? This, that, and the other thing.
I'm a catfish hunter my first year as a rookie with the Kansas City A's, and you couldn't have found more different people than a guy from Hertford, North Carolina, and a guy from Boston. And I don't know how we got put together. Maybe the H in the alphabet was close to L, and that's how we got to be together. But I thought what I learned from him and the way he would describe things, and he took the pressure off the game for me. He was so easygoing. His way of taking each day as it came was simple and pure. He loved to go fishing. He loved Chinese food. My God, we had Chinese food 2-3 times a week. Man, it was a simple approach to everything. I think baseball was in his blood. I had not played nearly as much baseball as he had. When we came together as a team, we came together black and white and Spanish-speaking players. There was a richness, there was a beauty to having many colors and many dialects in the clubhouse and on the field. I'll mention one guy that I thought was a beautiful man was George Scott, Boomer. George Scott.
Oh yes.
Space
from Milwaukee, absolutely.
From Milwaukee, what a beautiful man. And Boomer, I came from, I think, Georgia, and he would come out to the mound, and he would talk in a high-pitched, like sing-song, like he was singing a song to you, and I couldn't understand him. And he'd be saying things to me, and then he'd give you a pat on the backside, and then he'd run back to first base. And I'd ask the catcher, I said, what did he say? I'll be honest with you, I don't know what he said, but he wants you to throw strikes,
Throw strikes, but don't give him anything good to hit. Have you heard that before?
I heard throw strikes a lot.
Okay. All right.
I wanted to pitch the strike zone.
Hey, Skip, great offering. I'm so happy to be doing this with you, and we'll do it again, same time, same bat channel next week.
Thank you, Ralph. It's a privilege to be on. Thank you very much.
My privilege. Thank you on behalf of Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. It's Inside Pitch with Skip Lockwood. Adios, everybody.
Good night, Ralph.